My wife sold my late mother's jewelry to pay for her friend's bachelorette party, thinking I would never find out. You should have seen her face when I showed her the receipt. It began innocently enough. I was in the cupboard looking for an old photo album that my wife had mentioned she wanted to look at. You know how it is, you promise to organize the cupboard every year and never actually do it. So there I was, knee-deep in random boxes, when I realized something wasn't where it should be. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My mum's jewelry box wasn't in its usual place. It wasn't a fancy safe or anything, just a sturdy old box that she'd had since I was a kid. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to sell it or give it away. It was sentimental stuff, things she'd worn every day, little things with huge emotional value. At first I thought, okay, maybe I moved them and forgot about them. It happens, right? So I kept looking. Every shelf, every drawer, even the bathroom cupboards. Don't ask me why. Desperation makes you stupid. But it was nowhere to be found. I tried to tell myself it was just misplaced. Perhaps my wife had moved it while cleaning? Yes, that made sense. But there was this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, a little voice telling me something wasn't right. I decided to casually ask her when she got home. Hey, have you seen Mum's jewelry box? But her reaction? Priceless. She froze in the middle of her snack, as if I'd just asked her if she'd seen a ghost. No, she said, her voice a little too high. Why should I know where it is? That's when I knew something was up. My wife isn't exactly subtle under pressure. Her reaction stayed with me. It wasn't the kind of, I don't know, you'd get when someone genuinely doesn't know. It was more of an, oh crap, he's on to me, kind of reaction. But I didn't push it at the time. I just shrugged it off and said, it's probably buried under all my stuff somewhere. No big deal. She gave me this weird smile and went back to eating, but I could tell she was nervous. The next day, while she was out, I decided to have another look. I mean really look. I tore through the cupboard like a raccoon at a buffet. Still nothing. I even checked her side of the dresser, not because I thought she'd hide it there, but because I was running out of places to look. That's when I noticed something else. A receipt. Crumpled up at the back of her drawer. Now, I'm not a snoop by nature, but when you find a pawnbroker's receipt from the very day you were both too busy to clean, your brain starts to connect the dots. It listed a bunch of items: a gold necklace, a ring with sapphires, a pearl bracelet. My mother's bracelet. I stared at the receipt for a long time. My brain was doing mental gymnastics, trying to come up with an explanation that didn't involve my wife selling my mother's jewelry. But let's face it, there wasn't one. At first I thought, maybe she needed the money for something important? Something she didn't want to admit? But then I remembered there hadn't been any emergencies. No surprise bills, no crazy expenses. Just her best friend's upcoming hen night. Once the initial shock had worn off, I decided I needed answers. I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof, but let's just say my confidence in her innocence was waning fast. I grabbed the receipt and decided to check out the pawn shop listed on it. It wasn't too far from where we lived, close enough to be convenient for someone who didn't want to get caught. As I walked in, I was greeted by the smell of old wood and metal, along with that certain vibe that pawn shops always have. Like every item has a story you probably don't want to know. The guy behind the counter gave me a nod and I tried to act casual. Hey, I'm looking for some jewelry, I said, pulling out the receipt. These pieces were sold here recently. I was wondering if they're still here. He squinted at the receipt, then at me, as if deciding whether I looked trustworthy. Yes, we have some of that stuff. Are you the one who pawned them? I felt my face flush. No. My wife sold it. But, I think there's been a misunderstanding. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't press. Instead, he turned around, rummaged through a few drawers and came back with a small tray. And there it was, my mum's necklace, bracelet and ring, sitting there as if they hadn't been ripped out of my life without my knowledge. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Seeing them in the shop, reduced to a price tag, made my blood boil. I asked the man how much it would cost to buy them back, and when he told me, I almost laughed. It wasn't even close to what they were worth, sentimentally or financially. Nevertheless, I handed over my credit card and walked out with the jewelry, clutching the box like a lifeline. My next stop? Confronting my wife. When I got home, I put the jewelry box on the kitchen counter, right in the middle, where she couldn't miss it. Then I sat down and waited. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't sure if it was from anger, betrayal, or the anticipation of her reaction. She came in a little later, humming to herself, clearly in a good mood. The moment her eyes landed on the jewelry box, she froze. You know that deer in the headlights look? That was her. Oh, look what I found, I said, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. Any idea how this ended up in a pawn shop? She blinked a few times, her face going pale. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her voice breaking at the last word. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the receipt. Funny because it says otherwise. I slid it across the counter to her. She didn't even try to pick it up, just stared at it like it was going to bite her. You went through my stuff? She finally managed to say, clearly grasping at straws. Oh no, I shot back. Don't try and turn this around on me. I wouldn't have had to go through your stuff if you hadn't sold my mother's jewelry. She opened her mouth to argue, but no sound came out. Instead, she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, avoiding eye contact. Finally, she muttered, It's not like you ever wear it or anything. That's when I lost it. Of course I don't wear it. It was my mother's. It's not about wearing it, it's about what it means. And you sold it for what? To throw a hen party? Her silence confirmed it all. I was pacing now, unable to sit still. A hen party? Seriously? What makes you think selling my late mother's jewelry is a good idea for something like that? She finally snapped back, her arms crossed. Oh, don't act like I sold the family heirloom for a yacht or something. It was just sitting there gathering dust. And yes, I needed the money for Brittany's hen weekend because you refused to help me with it. I stopped pacing and stared at her. Are you actually trying to justify this? Her voice got louder. You didn't even notice it was gone until now. How much could it really mean to you? That hit a nerve. It means everything to me. It was my mom's. She's gone and that box is one of the few things I have left of her. And you just what? Threw it away like it didn't matter? She rolled her eyes, and I knew we were entering uncharted territory. You're being so dramatic. I didn't throw it away, I sold it to get something useful. Do you know how much it cost to pay for everything? The hotel, the drinks, the food, it all added up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Oh, well, in that case, let me just sell my soul while we're at it. You know, just to pay the electricity bill. She glared at me. You're overreacting. I couldn't help myself, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the situation was so absurd it felt like a bad sitcom. Overreacting? Are you listening to yourself? You sold something priceless for tequila shots and glitter decorations, and you think I'm the one overreacting? She tried to storm past me, but I wasn't finished. Wait, I said, grabbing the jewelry box from the counter and holding it up. You see this? This is now back in my hands. Because, unlike you, I actually care what it means. And I got it back for less than you spent on that ridiculous party. Her jaw dropped, but she didn't say anything. I could see the realization sinking in the party, the lies, the pawn shop, it was all catching up with her. And let me tell you, her face was priceless. For a moment we just stood there in silence. Her mouth was half open, as if she was trying to think of something to say, but nothing came out. I couldn't decide whether she was embarrassed, angry, or just realizing how deep a hole she had dug. Then she finally said it. You really went to the pawn shop to get it back? I held up the receipt. What else was I supposed to do? Wait for you to miraculously confess out of guilt? That must have hit a nerve because she shot back. I wasn't going to confess, but I wasn't going to hide it forever either. It's not like I spent the money on myself. Oh, well, that makes it so much better, I said with a sarcastic grin. Next time, why don't you sell the couch to pay for your friend's spa day? Her eyes narrowed. You're such a drama queen. It's not like I sold our wedding rings or anything. I couldn't help myself, I laughed. A full, almost hysterical laugh. Oh, thank you for clearing that up. What a saint you are for not hawking our wedding rings to fund your next karaoke night. It was at this point that the absurdity of the situation began to sink in. She muttered, Okay, maybe it was a bad decision. Maybe? I shot back, but then I saw the corner of her mouth twitch, as if she was trying not to smile. And suddenly the whole ridiculousness of it all broke through the tension. We both started to laugh, not the "everything's fine now" kind of laugh, but the kind where you're so overwhelmed that it's either laughing or crying. You're impossible, she said, shaking her head. Yeah? Well, you're lucky I love you. Otherwise I'd pawn your shoes to get back at you. The laughter eventually died down, but the awkwardness in the room didn't. She was leaning against the counter, fiddling with a random spoon as if it held the answers to life. I sat down, the jewelry box still in my hands, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and relief. So, what now? She asked, avoiding eye contact. Well, I began. I've already rescued the jeweler from the depths of pawn shop purgatory. I guess the next step is to figure out how you're going to make it up to me and my mom, wherever she's watching from. She winced at that last part, and I felt a little bad for saying it. A little. I'll do something, she muttered. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand. Out of hand? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the part where you pawned my dead mom's belongings for your boyfriend's bar crawl, or the part where you lied to my face when I asked about it? Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time she looked genuinely sorry. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I said, a little softer this time. You did. She nodded, and then, out of nowhere, she said, I could have just asked you to help pay for Brittany's party, but I thought you'd say no. Of course I'd say no, I replied. Have you met me? I'm not funding a bachelorette party with flaming margaritas and matching tiaras. She cracked a small smile at that, and I sighed. Look, I get that you wanted to help your friend, but there are a million ways you could have done it that didn't involve this. I gestured at the jewelry box. I know, she said, looking down at the ground. I'll fix it. I promise. The next day I thought things might calm down. She had promised to fix it, and I was curious to see what that meant. As it turned out, I wasn't prepared for what actually happened. She decided to invite some of her friends over to help her brainstorm ways to make it up to me. I wasn't thrilled about having a bunch of them in the house, but I figured maybe they'd pressure her into coming up with something really thoughtful. I was in the living room, minding my own business, when I heard a loud crash from the kitchen. My heart sank. I went in to find absolute chaos. One of her friends, this overly enthusiastic woman called Carla, had somehow managed to knock a whole stack of plates off the counter. Not just any plates, the nice ones we only used when we wanted to pretend to be fancy people. Oops, Carla said with a sheepish grin, holding her hands up as if surrendering to the police. This countertop is just too slippery. Slippery? It's granite. It doesn't get any less slippery. Meanwhile, another friend was trying to clean up the mess and slipped on a stray piece of ceramic. She screamed, grabbed the edge of the table for balance, and yes, you guessed it, knocked the whole thing over. Glasses, snacks, and what looked like a whole pitcher of sangria went flying in all directions. I just stood there, stunned, as the chaos unfolded. My wife was desperately trying to salvage what she could, shouting at Carla to be careful, which was ironic given the scene. What's going on? I finally managed to ask, dodging a rolling apple as it made its way across the floor. We've been brainstorming, my wife said, her voice cracking. Carla thought we should do something creative, like make you a surprise dinner to apologize. A surprise dinner? I gestured to the battleground of broken crockery and spilled wine. Looks like the surprise is on me. I stood there, staring at what had once been my kitchen, now resembling a scene from a food fight gone horribly wrong. Sangria dripping from the cupboards. Chips smashed into the floor. plates smashed in every corner. Carla, still holding the culprit pitcher, had the audacity to say, "Well, at least it smells good in here now. Sangria air freshener, anyone?" My wife gave her a look that could have melted steel. "Carla, maybe you could just sit down," she said through gritted teeth. "Where?" Carla asked, gesturing to the overturned table. Meanwhile, one of the other friends was trying to clean up the mess with what I can only assume was a tea towel. It did absolutely nothing but smear red sangria all over the floor, creating what looked like a crime scene. "I don't think this is helping your case," I said, crossing my arms and trying not to laugh at the absurdity of it all. My wife sighed in exasperation. "This was supposed to be a thoughtful dinner. Something to show you I'm sorry." "Thoughtful dinner?" I said, pointing at the mess. "This is more like a low-budget disaster film." Just then, Carla tried to help by picking up a glass that had somehow survived the carnage. Of course, it didn't survive for long. She tripped over the mop someone had left leaning against the fridge, sending the glass flying into the sink with a spectacular crash. "Okay, everybody out," my wife finally shouted, throwing her hands in the air. "Just out." Carla shrugged, grabbed her handbag and said, "Hey, I tried." As her friends shuffled out, muttering apologies, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I laughed. Hard. The kind of laugh that makes your stomach hurt. "What's so funny?" my wife asked, still clearly seething. "Everything," I said between gasps. "The plates, the table, Carla, the whole thing. If that's what your apology looks like, I almost want to see what your revenge would have been." She rolled her eyes, but couldn't help smiling. "Glad one of us finds it funny." After her friends left, we were left to deal with the aftermath of what could only be described as a culinary apocalypse. There were broken plates, sticky sangria and crushed crisps everywhere. My wife grabbed a broom, handed me a mop and we set to work, either of us saying much at first. After about 10 minutes she broke the silence. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she asked, sweeping a pile of ceramic shards into a dustpan. "I mean, I wouldn't say I'm enjoying it," I replied, dragging the mop across the floor. "But if we're being honest, it's probably the most entertaining apology I've ever received." She huffed, but there was a hint of a smile on her face. "I just wanted to do something nice for you. And okay, maybe to make up for the jewelry thing, which I'm still really sorry about." I stopped mopping and leaned against the counter, looking at her. "I know you are," I said, my tone softening. "And honestly, I think this dash," I gestured at the mess around us, "is probably apology enough." She gave me a skeptical look. "You're letting me off the hook that easily?" "Well," I said with a grin, "you managed to entertain me and give me a great story to tell for the rest of my life. That counts for something." She laughed for the first time all evening, and it felt like the tension was finally starting to lift. "You're impossible," she said, shaking her head. "And yet you married me," I shot back. As we finished cleaning, the absurdity of the situation became more and more hilarious. By the time the kitchen was spotless, we were both in tears from laughing. "I'm going to make it up to you," she said, leaning against the broom. "No friends, no broken plates, just you and me." "Deal," I said. "But if Carla comes within a mile of this kitchen again, I'm barricading the door." As we finished cleaning up, I couldn't help but think back to the jewelry. It wasn't just the pieces themselves, although their value was undeniable, it was the memories that came with them. The way my mother wore that pearl bracelet to every special occasion, or the gold necklace she never took off, even for the most mundane of tasks. When we had cleared the last corner of the kitchen, I went into the living room and placed the jewelry box on the coffee table. I opened it and looked at the pieces, each one bringing back a flood of memories. She came in quietly, watching me from the doorway. I could feel her guilt hanging in the air, but she didn't say anything and neither did I. Instead, I closed the box, locked it, and carried it back to its proper place in the cupboard. It felt good to know it was safe again, like a piece of my mum was back where it belonged. Later that evening, she handed me a small envelope. No explanation, no grand gestures, just an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note apologizing for everything. Attached was a receipt for a donation she'd made to a local women's refuge in my mother's name. She didn't have to say anything. For the first time since the whole mess started, I felt like she really understood why the jewelry meant so much to me. A few days later, life had largely returned to normal. The jewelry was safely tucked away and the kitchen no longer looked like a disaster zone. We didn't talk much about the incident after that, but something about her attitude had changed. One evening I caught her sneaking into the cupboard. For a second my heart raced, thinking she was up to something again. But when I peeked around the corner, I saw her carefully rearranging things, making space around the jewelry box as if it were some kind of shrine. She had even placed a small cushion underneath it. I couldn't help laughing. "What's with the VIP treatment?" I teased. She turned startled, but then shrugged. "I thought it deserved a better place. You know, out of respect for your mom." It wasn't perfect, and it didn't erase everything that had happened, but it was a start. From then on, we both tried to be a bit more considerate. She cut back on her over-the-top gestures to friends, and I tried to appreciate the ways she tried to show she cared even if they sometimes backfired spectacularly. Looking back, I still laugh at the chaos that ensued. The broken plates, Carla's disaster-prone energy, and that unforgettable pawnshop trip. It was a mess, but it was our mess, and somehow we came out stronger, or at least with a good story to tell.